My name is Jeanette, and I'm 34 years old. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely get the key into the lock. The fertility clinic's parking lot was 23 minutes behind me, and those words kept echoing in my head. Not pregnant. Again. Third failed IVF attempt. Mark said he had an important meeting today, couldn't miss it. I understood. I always understood. The medication made me dizzy. I pushed open our front door and froze. Our living room had been transformed into a nursery, and there was Amy, Mark's assistant, folding tiny pink onesies, her pregnant belly unmistakable. My legs gave out. I collapsed. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from today. Please hit like and subscribe if you've ever felt betrayed when you were most vulnerable. Because what I discovered that day changed everything. 6 months earlier, anyone looking at Mark and me would have seen the perfect couple. We'd been married 8 years, owned a beautiful colonial house in Westbrook, Connecticut, and seemed to have everything figured out. Mark worked as a senior real estate agent at Preston Realty, pulling in 6 figures annually. I managed the books for 3 local businesses from my home office. Sunday dinners at his parents' house, date nights every Friday. The American dream, really. But behind our smiling Christmas card photos was a 4-year battle with infertility that was slowly destroying us. Or so I thought it was destroying both of us. It started simply enough. We decided to try for a baby on my 30th birthday. Mark had been so romantic about it. He'd converted our spare bedroom into what he called our future nursery, even though nothing was in it yet. Just empty walls painted soft yellow. He'd stand in that doorway sometimes talking about teaching our son to throw a baseball or taking our daughter to ballet class. After a year of trying naturally, we saw a specialist. Unexplained infertility, they called it. The cruelest diagnosis, because there was nothing specific to fix. Just bad luck, they said. We started with basic treatments. Hormone pills that made me gain 15 pounds. Scheduled intimacy that turned our romance into a medical procedure. Mark held my hand through every appointment, every negative test. Then came the IVF recommendation, $20,000 per cycle. Insurance covered nothing. My mother had just passed away, leaving me a $150,000 inheritance. She'd always dreamed of grandchildren. Using that money seemed like honoring her memory. Mark hired a new assistant around that time. Amy Rodriguez, 26 years old, fresh from business school. She seemed wonderful at first. She'd bring me flowers on particularly hard days, saying Mark had mentioned I needed cheering up. She remembered my birthday, asked about my treatments with what seemed like genuine concern. When I couldn't make it to Mark's company Christmas party because of treatment side effects, Amy sent me photos throughout the night, so I wouldn't feel left out. The first IVF cycle failed. Mark cried with me in that hospital room. Amy sent a care package with chocolate and wine, and a card that said, "Miracles take time." I thought I was lucky to have such support. But small things started changing. Mark began working late. First once a week, then 3 times. Big deals, he explained. The market was hot. Amy would text me these updates when Mark was too busy. "Sorry, Jeanette, keeping him late again tonight. Important client from Boston. I'll make sure he eats dinner." He stopped asking about my injection schedule. I'd been giving myself hormone shots every morning at 6. He used to set his alarm to sit with me. Then he started going to the gym at that time instead. Said exercise helped him cope with the stress. The stress of what I wondered. I was the one with bruises covering my stomach from needles. Our second IVF cycle came and went. Another failure. Mark suggested we take a break. Think about our options. Maybe consider living child-free. Travel more. Focus on us. But the spare room he'd painted yellow haunted me. My mother's voice echoed in my dreams. The money she'd saved her whole life sat in our account waiting to create the family she never got to meet. I decided to continue alone. Not literally alone. Mark was still my husband. He still kissed me goodbye each morning, still came home each night. But emotionally, spiritually, I was fighting this battle solo. He'd pat my shoulder when I cried, offer hollow reassurances, then retreat to his office for urgent calls with Amy about upcoming showings. The signs were there. His new cologne. The gym membership that sculpted his dad bod into something Amy probably appreciated. The way he'd angle his phone away when texting. How he'd suddenly become interested in redecorating our spare room. That room we'd kept locked for 2 years, saving it for our miracle. Now he wanted to make it a home gym. I refused. We fought. He slept in the guest room for a week until I apologized for being hormonal. Amy's concern for my treatment schedule intensified oddly. She'd call to confirm exactly when my appointments were, how long I'd be gone, whether I was driving myself home. Such a caring friend, I thought, making sure someone knew my whereabouts in case I needed help. The clinic became my second home during those months, every other day for blood work, ultrasounds to check follicle growth. The waiting room filled with women like me, our eyes holding the same desperate hope and familiar disappointment. We'd exchange knowing looks over outdated magazines, united in our struggle. Linda became my closest friend there. 38 years old, 5th IVF attempt. Her husband drove her to every appointment, worked crossword puzzles in the waiting room. That's what partnership looked like. I'd watch them and wonder when Mark had last asked about my hormone levels or held my hand during a blood draw. He'd missed the egg retrieval for my 3rd cycle. Big presentation for waterfront condos. Couldn't reschedule. Amy drove me instead. She held my hand in pre-op, took photos of me looking brave, promised to stay until Mark arrived. He never did. Emergency client meeting. Amy apologized on his behalf the entire drive home while I sat with ice packs between my legs, cramping from the procedure. The embryologist called with good news initially. 12 eggs retrieved, 8 fertilized. But by day 5 only 2 embryos survived, and their quality was questionable. The doctor recommended transferring both to increase our chances. Mark responded to my tearful phone call with a text. Maybe it's a sign we should stop. A sign. Like our infertility was the universe sending us a message. Like my body's failure was cosmic intervention. I stared at that text for an hour, waiting for a follow-up. Just kidding. And I love you. Nothing came. My mother had been gone exactly 1 year when I prepared for the 3rd embryo transfer. I'd spent her inheritance freely on treatments, believing she'd approve. She'd always said money meant nothing compared to family. The morning of the transfer, I woke at 4:30. The protocol required a full bladder, so I'd been drinking water steadily. Mark's alarm went off at 5. He needed to prepare for quarterly reports. Big day at the office. Couldn't miss it. He pecked my cheek, mumbled something about positive thoughts, and left before I could ask him to reconsider. The house felt enormous and empty. I sat in our yellow spare room for 20 minutes talking to my mother's spirit, begging her to help me from wherever she was. The drive to the clinic took 40 minutes. I'd made this trip so many times I could navigate it with my eyes closed. Park in Section B. Elevator to the 3rd floor. Sign in with Brenda, who knew my name and medical record number by heart. Change into the hospital gown that never closed properly in the back. Wait for my name to be called. Linda was there for her retrieval. We hugged in the hallway, careful not to disturb each other's IV lines. She wished me luck. I promised to text her immediately with results. Her husband nodded at me, that sympathetic look people give when they know your partner should be there but isn't. The transfer itself took 8 minutes. The doctor showed me the embryos on a screen. 2 tiny clusters of cells that might become my children. Or might not. Statistics said 30% chance at my age with these grades. I'd beaten worse odds in life. The nurse held my hand while the doctor worked. She didn't mention Mark's absence, but her extra kindness said she noticed. Bed rest for 2 days after. Doctor's orders. Mark brought me meals on trays, set up Netflix on our bedroom TV, worked from his laptop beside me. Almost like old times. Amy texted constantly. Updates on listings. Questions only Mark could answer. Urgent signatures needed. I watched him respond immediately to each message while my attempts at conversation were met with distracted mumbles. 2 weeks later, the blood test. Negative. Not pregnant. The nurse Bethany hugged me while I sobbed in the consultation room. She'd seen my journey from the beginning. 3 cycles. 3 failures. She mentioned donor eggs, gently said, "Many women found success that way." I nodded numbly, gathered the pamphlets, stumbled to my car. I sat in that parking lot for an hour. Other women came and went. Some crying like me. Others glowing with good news, clutching ultrasound photos. I texted Mark. Negative again. No response. 20 minutes. 40. An hour. Finally, 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then nothing. 3 weeks before everything fell apart, I'd found a receipt in Mark's car. Prenatal vitamins from CVS. My heart had jumped. Was he planning to surprise me? Encourage me to keep trying? When I asked, he barely looked up from his phone. For Gary's wife at the office. She asked me to grab them during lunch. The lie came so easily. Amy's interest in my schedule became almost obsessive. She'd call to confirm appointments I'd mentioned weeks ago. Double-check what time I'd be home. Offer to keep Mark company on evenings I had support group meetings. Just dropping off contracts, she'd say. Don't want him eating takeout alone again. Diana, my best friend since college, tried warning me. We were having coffee at our usual spot when she grabbed my hands across the table. "Jeanette, something's not right. Mark's different. Amy's always around. Open your eyes." But I couldn't. Wouldn't. The fertility medications made me emotional paranoid. That's what Mark said whenever I questioned anything. The hormones were making me crazy. Seeing problems where none existed. But then came the cologne. Not just new, but expensive. Tom Ford. $300 a bottle. The same scent I'd smelled on Amy when she'd driven me home from the egg retrieval. Coincidence, I told myself. Maybe she'd asked for his recommendation. Maybe the office was doing Secret Santa. Maybe anything except what my gut screamed. His gym routine became sacred. 5 mornings a week. New protein shakes. Meal prep containers. His soft stomach became abs. His gentle arms became defined biceps. Who was this transformation for? Not me. We hadn't been intimate outside of scheduled fertility windows in months. He'd claim exhaustion whenever I tried to initiate. Too much stress from work. The night I drove to his office was pure impulse. 10 o'clock. He'd said he'd be home by 7 but texted about paperwork. I brought Chinese food from his favorite place thinking I'd surprise him. The parking lot was empty except for his BMW and Amy's Honda. 3rd floor lights on. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, takeout cooling in the passenger seat, inventing innocent explanations. Finally, I drove home, threw the food in the trash, took an Ambien, and pretended to be asleep when he crawled into bed at midnight. The spare room door was my breaking point. We'd kept it locked for 2 years. Our future nursery. Sacred space. But one Tuesday I found it wide open. Nothing inside had been touched. Same yellow walls. Same emptiness. But the violation felt profound. When I mentioned it to Mark, his explosion was immediate. Why was I so paranoid? Had I been snooping? Was I accusing him of something? The hormones were making me insane. Maybe I should see a therapist. Maybe the stress of infertility was breaking my mind. Gaslighting works best when you're already vulnerable. When your body has failed you repeatedly. When chemicals course through your veins. When everyone pregnant seems to glow while you wither. I apologized to Mark. Promised to manage my emotions better. Made an appointment with a counselor to discuss my paranoia. The counselor, Dr. Martinez, listened to my concerns and asked one question that changed everything. If your best friend told you this exact story, what would you tell her? I sat in silence for 30 seconds. Then I knew. But knowing and acting are different beasts. I stayed. Kept injecting hormones. Kept attending appointments alone. Kept pretending Mark's distance was work stress. Kept believing Amy's sweetness was genuine. Kept hoping our marriage would survive once we had a baby. Even if that baby never came. The day before my final transfer, Amy called to wish me luck. She seemed to know details I hadn't shared. The exact time. The specific protocol. how the doctor wanted to try a different approach. Mark must have told her, though I couldn't remember telling him. She promised to pray for me, said she'd light a candle at her church, sent heart emojis and baby dust gifts. Her performance was flawless. That final morning arrived gray and drizzling. Pathetic fallacy, my English teacher would have called it. Weather-matching mood. I'd given myself the trigger shot 36 hours earlier. My abdomen was swollen tender. Every movement hurt. But this was it. Last embryos. Last chance with my own eggs. Last hope for the family I'd dreamed about since I was 12 years old, cradling baby dolls. The clinic called my name at 9:15. Dr. Patterson was gentle but honest. The embryo quality was even lower than before. 15% chance optimistically. Had I considered donor eggs? Many women found success that route. Insurance might even cover part of it. I nodded, signed consent forms, climbed onto the table, and stared at the ceiling while she worked. The screen showed my embryos one final time. 2 fragile clusters of cells that would either become my everything or my nothing. The catheter entered. Slight pressure. Then done. 8 minutes to transfer my dreams into my uterus. The nurse squeezed my shoulder. Sticky notes covered in affirmations decorated the ceiling. You are strong. Miracles happen. Trust the process. Empty platitudes from successful patients who'd forgotten this particular hell. Recovery took an hour, lying still while other women shuffled past for their procedures. The couple next door was on their first try. So optimistic. So naive. I wanted to warn them. Tell them to protect their marriage. Watch for signs. Don't let infertility poison everything. But I stayed silent, staring at those stupid affirmations. The drive home was automatic. Radio off. Windows cracked despite the rain. Every pothole sent cramps through my pelvis. The protocol said bed rest, but first I needed to stop at Walgreens. More progesterone. More prenatal vitamins. More hope packaged in pharmaceutical bottles. Sitting in that Walgreens parking lot, I texted Mark one more time. Transfer done. Heading home. Need rest. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally his response. In meeting. Talk later. No heart emoji. No good luck. No I love you. Just dismissal disguised as busy. But Amy's text arrived seconds later. Thinking of you, brave mama. Mark mentioned you'd be home by noon. Rest up. You've got this. How did she know I'd be home by noon? I hadn't told Mark that. The appointment had been scheduled for 9. Could have taken until 2. Unless they'd called the clinic. Unless they knew exactly how long everything would take. Unless they needed to know precisely when I'd return. The rain intensified during my drive home. 23 minutes from clinic to driveway. I'd timed it so many times. Each return trip filled with diminishing hope. This time felt different. Not because I believed these embryos would survive, but because something in my universe had shifted. The feeling you get before earthquakes. That animal instinct that says, run. Amy's Honda was in my driveway. Not unusual anymore. She dropped by twice a week with contracts supposedly. Always when I was gone. Always for urgent signatures. I pulled in beside her, noticing the baby on board sticker newly affixed to her rear window. Odd. Amy didn't have kids. The front door was unlocked. Also not unusual. Mark worked from home Fridays. Amy had a key for emergencies. I'd given it to her myself 6 months ago when she'd offered to water our plants during a weekend trip. She'd never returned it. I'd never asked. Laughter floated from upstairs. High-pitched. Amy's giggle. Low rumble. Mark's rare, genuine laugh. Not his office. Further down the hall. The spare room. Our sacred yellow nursery. My hand trembled on the banister. Each step upward took enormous effort. The fertility drugs made me dizzy. The emotional exhaustion made me weak. The growing dread made me nauseous. The door stood wide open, but what I saw inside defied comprehension. Gone were the empty yellow walls. Instead, a fully assembled nursery. White crib with pink bedding, matching changing table stocked with diapers, rocking chair with embroidered cushions, wall decals of butterflies and flowers, a mobile playing Mozart. Everything I'd bookmarked on Pinterest. Every dream I'd saved for someday. But it was Amy standing in the center, her shirt lifted Mark's hand on her pronounced belly that broke my mind. She was holding tiny booties, pink ones, laughing about kicks, about their daughter, their family, in my house, in my nursery, with my husband. The room spun. My knees buckled. The last thing I saw before hitting the floor was an ultrasound photo taped to the wall. Amy Rodriguez, 24 weeks, baby girl Mitchell. The hardwood floor was cold against my cheek. I could hear them arguing above me. Not about me, about timing. She wasn't supposed to be home yet, Amy hissed. The appointment should have taken until 2. You said the transfer would take longer. Mark's response was measured. Annoyed. Not guilty. Not surprised. Just inconvenienced. Like I was a package delivered too early. He stepped over me. Actually stepped over my collapsed body to close the door. Privacy was needed for their conversation. Amy crouched beside me, fake concern dripping from her voice. Oh my God, Jeanette. Are you okay? Should I call an ambulance? Her hand touched my shoulder. I vomited, directly on her designer maternity jeans, the ones I'd complimented last week when she'd claimed they were for her sister. Get up, Mark commanded. Stop being dramatic. You're embarrassing yourself. The man who'd cried at our wedding, who'd promised to love me in sickness and health, who'd held me through my mother's death, now disgusted by my presence on his floor. Our floor. My floor technically, since my inheritance had made the down payment. Adrenaline is remarkable. It can lift cars off children, help mothers fight bears, make betrayed wives stand when their bodies want to dissolve. I pulled myself up using the door frame, spit the bile from my mouth, looked at them, really looked. Mark had his arm around Amy's shoulders. Protective. Possessive. She'd pressed into his side. United front. Her free hand cradled her belly. The bump was obvious now without the loose blazers she'd worn around me. 6 months, maybe 7. The math was easy. 8 months since she'd started working for him. Pregnant within weeks. While I'd been injecting myself with hormones, she'd been fertile without trying. It's not what it looks like, Mark started. The oldest lie in the cheater's handbook. Amy giggled. Actually giggled. Seriously, Mark? Not what it looks like. I'm literally pregnant with your child in the nursery you built. Just tell her. She deserves the truth. The truth. As if I hadn't already pieced it together. But I wanted to hear them say it. Needed the words spoken aloud. Make it real. Make it undeniable. Make it impossible for Mark to gaslight later. We're in love, Amy announced. Real love. Not the desperate, sad thing you two have. Had. We didn't mean for it to happen. These things just do. Chemistry. Connection. Fate. Mark's going to be an amazing father. Our daughter will have everything, including parents who actually want each other. Every word was calculated cruelty, designed to wound where I already bled. Mark watched my face, waiting for me to break, scream, throw things, give him ammunition for later. See, she's unstable. The hormones made her crazy. I had to leave for my own safety. Instead, I found my voice. Steady, cold, detached. How long? 8 months, Mark admitted. Since her 2nd week. That networking event in Boston. You couldn't come because of your retrieval recovery. Amy kept me company. One drink led to another. It just happened. Just happened. Like pregnancy just happened for them. Easily. Naturally. While I'd endured needles and surgeries and failures. 8 months of deception. Every sympathy card from Amy. Every late night at the office. Every gym session that sculpted his body for her young eyes. All lies. The nursery I gestured at the transformation. We started planning after the first ultrasound, Amy explained. Mark wanted our daughter to have the perfect room. We knew you'd be doing treatments all summer. Plenty of time to prepare while you were distracted. The furniture arrived yesterday. We thought you'd be gone until tonight. My money, because I knew. The credit card statements I'd been too depressed to review. The savings account steadily draining. Attributed to medical expenses. To necessary costs. To our shared dream. Our daughter needed things. Mark shrugged. You were wasting it anyway. 3 failed cycles. The doctor told me you'd never carry to term. Your eggs are basically dead. Amy's young, healthy, fertile. Made sense to invest in a real future. A real future. Our 8-year marriage was a false past. Our 4 years of trying was wasted effort. I was the placeholder while he waited for something better. Someone younger. Someone whose body worked correctly. Does anyone else know? Amy smiled. Everyone at the office. Mark's family. We announced at Easter dinner. His mother bought us the crib. She's thrilled to finally have a grandchild. A real grandchild. Not some science experiment that would probably have autism or Down syndrome anyway. Easter dinner. The one I'd missed because of egg retrieval. Mark had said his family sent their love. Their prayers. Their support. Instead, they'd been toasting his virile success with a woman 14 years younger than me. You need to leave. The words came from somewhere primal. This is my house. My name is on the deed. My inheritance paid the mortgage. You have exactly 1 hour to pack your things and get out. Both of you. Or I call the police. Mark laughed. Actually laughed. You can't kick me out of my own house. I live here. My name's on everything. Wrong. I pulled out my phone. Speed dialed Diana. Put her on speaker. Bring Beth. Bring the documents. They're here. Diana didn't ask questions. 20 minutes, she promised. What documents? Mark's confidence wavered. Did you think I was stupid that hormones made me blind? I've known something was wrong for months. Beth researched everything. This house is mine. Inheritance property. State law protects it. Your name's on nothing except the utility bills, which you haven't paid in 3 months because you've been buying baby furniture. Amy's face paled. You knew not everything, not this, but enough to protect myself legally, enough to document Mark's financial infidelity, enough to prove emotional abandonment, enough to destroy both of you if necessary. Diana arrived in 15 minutes with Beth, my lawyer cousin who specialized in divorce. They'd brought boxes, empty ones, and a video camera, and 2 witnesses from Diana's book club. Military precision for a situation they'd apparently been preparing for. Beth served papers I didn't know existed. Eviction notice, restraining order, financial freeze. She'd been building a case quietly, waiting for my signal. The video camera rolled while Amy admitted to the affair, while Mark confessed to misappropriating funds, while they stood in a nursery built with my money for a baby conceived through deception. This is insane. Mark's bravado crumbled. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. We're married. We're married. Past tense as of 3 days ago when Beth filed separation papers after you cleaned out the savings account. Did you think I wouldn't notice $40,000 disappearing? That was my mother's money. For our baby. Not your mistress's bastard. The word hung in the air. Harsh, cruel, true. Amy clutched her belly like I might harm her child. I wouldn't. Couldn't. That baby was innocent. But its parents were not. You have 45 minutes left. Pack what's yours. Leave what you stole. The nursery stays exactly as is. Evidence for court. Diana's book club will supervise. Beth will document everything. Test me and I call Mark's employer about inappropriate relations with a client's daughter. Amy gasped. You wouldn't. My father's biggest account at the firm. Your father. Who thinks you're in night school? Not pregnant with your married boss's baby. 1 phone call and Daddy knows everything. 1 email and the entire real estate community knows Mark Mitchell seduces young employees, destroys families, embezzles from wives undergoing medical treatment. Your choice. They packed in silence. Diana's book club, 4 women in their 60s who'd survived their own betrayals, watched like hawks. Every item Mark touched was photographed, every possession cataloged. Amy cried while folding the baby clothes they'd hidden in the closet. Designer onesies, cashmere blankets, everything I couldn't afford after 3 IVF cycles. Mark tried one last manipulation at the door. "You'll regret this. No one else will want you. Barren at 34. Damaged goods. I'm your only chance at happiness. When this pregnancy hormones fade, you'll beg me back." I looked at him. Really saw him for the first time. Thinning hair, weak chin, small hands that had touched another woman while I'd laid in stirrups. Average in every way except his cruelty. I'd rather be alone forever than spend another minute pretending you're worthy of love. "Get out." They left in Amy's Honda, the one with the new baby on board sticker. Mark's BMW stayed. My name was on that loan too. Another detail he'd forgotten. I stood in my doorway, the one I'd collapsed in an hour earlier, and watched them drive away. Diana's hand on my shoulder. Beth already calling locksmith companies. The book club heading inside to dismantle the nursery. But I stopped them. "Leave it, for now. I need to see it. Need to remember. Need evidence that this really happened. That I didn't imagine it all. That my marriage died in a room painted yellow for dreams that would never come true." The next 48 hours blurred into focused rage. I'd spent 4 years accepting failure. My body's failure, my marriage's failure, my dream's failure. But betrayal was different. Betrayal demanded action. First the locks, every door, every window, even the garage where Mark had hidden spare keys. The locksmith, a woman named Carla, who'd clearly seen this before, installed security cameras as a bonus. "Just in case he tries anything stupid," she said. They always do. Second, the finances. Beth had already frozen joint accounts, but I went deeper. Credit cards, investment portfolios, even the airline miles we'd accumulated for a baby moon that would never happen. Everything divided, documented, protected. Mark had been siphoning money for months. Small amounts, 500 here, 1,000 there. Funding his new life while I'd skipped lunches to afford progesterone supplements. Third, his employer. Professional obligation prevented me from calling immediately, but documentation could be gathered. Screenshots of Amy's social media, pictures of the nursery, bank statements showing embezzlement. Beth assembled everything into a neat package, ready to deploy if necessary. Fourth, his mother. She deserved to know first, before lawyers made everything ugly. I drove to her house at 7 a.m, knocked until she answered in her robe, showed her photos of the nursery, Amy's ultrasound, her son's confessions on video. Margaret Mitchell cried for 20 minutes, apologized for 30 more. She'd known about Amy, had met her at Easter, but thought it was just attraction. Thought Mark would come to his senses. Never imagined he'd gone this far. I didn't raise him to be this kind of man. Her words, her shame, her promise to testify if needed. Fifth, the IVF support group. I'd hidden my marital problems from these women. Pretended Mark was supportive, lied about his absence. But truth felt necessary now. Posted everything, photos, timeline, betrayal. Within an hour, 43 women responded. Similar stories, identical pain, marriages that couldn't survive infertility, men who found fertile women, support that felt like armor. Linda called immediately, offered her guest room, brought wine and ice cream, sat while I destroyed wedding photos, held my hair when wine and hormones made me vomit, reminded me that failure wasn't my fault, not my body's failure, not my marriage's failure, Mark's failure to be human, Amy's failure to be decent, their failure, not mine. Sixth, Mark's fishing buddy, Derek. He needed to know why poker night was canceled indefinitely. Derek listened in silence, then admitted he'd suspected, seen them together at lunch, noticed Mark's lies about weekend trips, but hadn't wanted to interfere. He apologized, offered to testify, mentioned 2 other women Mark had pursued, Ashley from accounting 2 years ago, Jennifer from the gym last summer. Amy wasn't special, just successful. 7th, the nursery. I couldn't dismantle it yet, but I could document everything. Every receipt found in drawers, every price tag hidden in trash. $47,000. They'd spent $47,000 of my money on their child. While I'd debated generic versus brand name prenatal vitamins. While I'd reused needles longer than recommended. While I'd skipped therapy because $90 a session seemed excessive. The crib alone cost $4,000, the one I'd dreamed about. Pinned on Pinterest 3 years ago. Shown Mark repeatedly. Too expensive, he'd always said. Not practical. But for Amy's baby, nothing was too much. I photographed everything. Multiple angles, close-ups of receipts, wide shots showing the full transformation. Evidence for lawyers, for judges, for anyone who might doubt the depth of this betrayal. Then I sat in the rocking chair they'd bought. Cried until dehydration stopped the tears. Mourned not just my marriage, but my parallel life. The one where Mark was faithful. Where our children played in this room. Where infertility was conquered together. Amy's father called that evening. Richard Rodriguez, major real estate developer. Mark's most important client. He apologized profusely. Had no idea Amy was pregnant. Thought she was in night school. Promised to withdraw all business from Preston Realty. Offered to pay damages. Seemed genuinely appalled by his daughter's behavior. Mark called 37 times. Left 12 voicemails. Each more desperate. Each offering different excuses. Amy meant nothing. The baby was an accident. He'd come home if I forgave him. We could raise the child together. Adopt it. Pretend it was ours. His delusion was almost pitiable. Amy texted twice. Long paragraphs about following her heart. How she'd never meant to hurt me. How Mark had pursued her. How she'd tried to resist. How fate was stronger than willpower. I responded once. Lose my number. Then blocked her. By Sunday morning, 72 hours post-collapse, I'd filed for divorce. Citing adultery, abandonment, financial abuse, emotional cruelty. Beth fast-tracked everything. Emergency hearing scheduled. Assets frozen. Temporary restraining order granted. Mark was staying with his mother. Amy had disappeared to her sisters in Vermont. The nursery remained untouched. A shrine to deception. I avoided that room but couldn't lock it. Needed to know it was real. Needed evidence I hadn't imagined everything. But Monday brought unexpected news. Dr. Patterson called personally. The embryo transfer had failed. Blood test definitive. Not pregnant. She was sorry. Suggested taking time. Considering options. Donor eggs, adoption, surrogacy. All possibilities when I was ready. I laughed. Actually laughed. Of course it failed. The universe wasn't that ironic. Wouldn't give me a baby while taking everything else. I thanked her. Promised to consider options. Didn't mention my husband had left me for his pregnant mistress. Seemed unnecessary. Pathetic. Too soap opera for real life. But Linda knew. She'd driven me to get the blood test. Waited in the parking lot. Held me after. Reminded me that families came in many forms. That DNA didn't determine love. That 34 wasn't too old. That donor eggs weren't surrender. That single mothers were warriors. That I was stronger than I knew. Tuesday I returned to work. My clients had been patient during treatment. Understanding about appointments. Flexible with delays. But business required attention. Numbers needed balancing. Taxes approached. Normal life resumed despite abnormal circumstances. Wednesday, Mark appeared at my office. Security stopped him, but I could see him through the window. Flowers in hand. The expensive roses he'd bought after every fight. The apology bouquet. The manipulation flowers. He waited 3 hours. Finally left them with reception. I threw them in the dumpster. Took photos of them in the garbage. Evidence of harassment for court. Thursday, Amy called from a blocked number. Crying. Her father had cut her off financially. fired her from his company where she'd worked before Mark, demanded she terminate the pregnancy or lose her inheritance. She needed money. Could I help? The audacity was breathtaking. I recorded the call. More evidence. Friday, 1 week since discovery, I stood in the nursery again. This time with purpose. Box by box, I packed their dreams. Every outfit, every toy, every carefully selected decoration. Loaded everything into a rental truck. Drove to Mark's mother's house. Unloaded it all on her lawn. Left a note. For your grandchild. From your daughter-in-law's inheritance. Margaret called within minutes, apologizing again, offering to return everything. But I didn't want it back. Those items were tainted, poisoned by deception. Let Amy have them. Let their daughter sleep in a crib bought with blood money. Let karma handle the rest. Saturday, I met with Dr. Patterson again. This time with clear eyes. Donor eggs had a 70% success rate at my age. The donor database was extensive, medical histories detailed. I could choose based on education, interests, physical features, or I could trust fate. Let the universe decide. Either way, motherhood remained possible, just differently than planned. Sunday, 2 weeks since collapsed divorce papers were served. Mark contested nothing. Couldn't. Evidence was overwhelming. Amy had left him when reality hit, when her father's money disappeared, when his job evaporated, when the fantasy dissolved. She'd moved back to Vermont permanently, planning to raise the baby alone. He'd lost everything for a woman who'd abandoned him the moment life got difficult. He texted one final time. I'm sorry. You deserved better. The baby isn't even mine. She was sleeping with 3 guys. DNA tests proved it. I destroyed us for nothing. Please forgive me. I didn't respond. Didn't care if it was true. Didn't matter anymore. The man I'd married was dead. Had been dying for years. Amy just held the funeral. I scheduled my donor egg consultation for Monday. Started the paperwork. Selected 3 potential donors. Began hormone preparation. My body might have failed at creating eggs, but it could still carry life. Still grow dreams. Still build family. Just not with Mark. 6 months later, I stood in the same doorway where I'd collapsed. But everything was different. The house was mine alone now. Legally. Emotionally. Spiritually. The divorce had been finalized in record time. Mark got nothing. The prenuptial agreement I'd insisted on years ago when my mother was dying and worried about her inheritance protected everything. The nursery had been transformed again. Not yellow anymore. A soft sage green. Peaceful. Hopeful. 2 cribs this time. Matching, but not identical. Because the 4th transfer had worked. Donor eggs, twin girls, growing perfectly at 24 weeks. The same gestational age Amy had been when I discovered everything. The donor was a teacher from Minnesota. Master's degree in literature, musical, athletic, brown hair, and green eyes like my mother. Her essay about wanting to help others build families had made me cry. Her eggs had created 6 embryos, 4 frozen for future siblings if desired. My support system had evolved remarkably. Linda was planning my baby shower. Diana had organized meal trains for after delivery. The IVF support group had become my village. 5 of us were pregnant now. Different paths, but same destination. We met weekly, compared symptoms, shared fears, celebrated milestones. Mark's mother, Margaret, had become an unexpected ally. She'd testified during the divorce, condemned her son's behavior publicly, sent checks for the nursery despite my protests, asked permission to be a grandmother to my twins. Real grandmother, not based on DNA but on choice. I'd agreed. These girls would need all the love available. My business had thrived during this period. Funny how clarity brings focus. Without the emotional drain of a failing marriage, I'd secured 4 new clients, expanded services, hired an assistant, moved to a larger office downtown. Success felt different when it was solely mine. Mark had moved to Arizona, started over with a new firm. Dated a series of younger women, according to Derek, who still checked in occasionally. Each relationship lasting weeks before they discovered his baggage, his pattern, his inability to commit when life got difficult. Amy had given birth to a son. Not Mark's. Some bartender from Burlington who wanted nothing to do with them. She'd moved in with her parents, posted constantly on social media about single motherhood, inspirational quotes about strength, photos of her baby with captions about love conquering all. The comment sections were brutal. Word had spread about her role in destroying a marriage. Karma might move slowly, but it was thorough. But I tried not to focus on them. Energy spent on anger was energy stolen from joy. My daughters needed positivity, needed a mother who'd chosen happiness despite heartbreak, who'd built beauty from betrayal. The anatomy scan had been perfect, both girls measuring exactly right, hearts beating strongly, all organs functioning. The doctor pointed out their profiles, their tiny fists, their crossed legs that made gender determination difficult until they shifted. I'd cried seeing them, not sad tears, grateful ones. These babies might not share my DNA, but they were absolutely mine. Tom entered my life accidentally. His daughter Emma was in Linda's dance class. His wife had died of ovarian cancer 2 years earlier. He understood grief, understood starting over, understood that some wounds never fully healed, but you learn to walk despite the limp. We met at a recital. Emma had fallen during her routine, got back up, finished despite tears. I'd instinctively moved to comfort her afterward. She detached immediately, started asking if I'd watch her next performance. Tom apologized for her forwardness. I promised to attend. Something about motherless daughters resonated deeply. Coffee followed. Then dinner. Then walks in the park while Emma played. He never pushed, never assumed, just existed in my orbit respectfully. When I told him about the twins, the donor eggs, the ugly divorce, he'd simply asked when my next appointment was. Could Emma and he come? She'd love to see the ultrasound. They'd sat in that waiting room like family, Emma holding my hand during the scan, Tom taking notes about developmental milestones, both celebrating when the doctor announced everything looked perfect, natural as breathing, like they'd always belonged there. We weren't romantic yet. Maybe never would be. But friendship felt revolutionary after years of deception. Honesty felt intimate after endless gaslighting. Support felt like love, even without labels. The morning I felt the first kicks, 25 weeks exactly, I was standing in the nursery. Sage green walls now covered with elephant decals. Emma had chosen them. Said elephants remembered everything. Never forgot family. Protected their babies fiercely. Seemed appropriate for daughters conceived through science and determination. The flutter was subtle initially, like butterflies. Then stronger. Definite movement. Both girls active. I placed both hands on my belly. Felt them respond. My daughters. Not Mark's. Not created through traditional conception, but absolutely mine. Margaret arrived an hour later with handmade blankets. She'd learned to knit specifically for this. Spent months creating matching but unique patterns. One with stars. One with moons. Because they were individuals, despite sharing a womb. We sat in the rocking chair Mark had bought for Amy. Reclaimed now. Repurposed. She felt the baby's kick. Cried happy tears. Apologized again for her son. I told her to stop. These babies would know only love. No apologies. No shame. No burden of others' mistakes. The baby shower Linda organized was everything I'd dreamed. 40 women came, each with their own survival story. Divorce, death, infertility, cancer. But all rebuilding, all choosing joy. The gifts were practical and plentiful. Diapers for months. Formula for supplementing. Bottles and blankets and everything twins would need. But more importantly, promises of help. Overnight shifts. Meal deliveries. Babysitting. Village building. At 32 weeks, bed rest was required. Blood pressure issues. Nothing serious, but caution necessary. Tom and Emma visited daily, brought books to read aloud, movies to watch. Emma practiced being a big sister on my belly, telling the twins about kindergarten, about her favorite colors, about how she'd teach them everything. Diana moved in temporarily, cooked every meal, managed my business remotely, reminded me that asking for help wasn't weakness, that single motherhood didn't mean solitary motherhood, that these girls would have more love than they'd know what to do with. At 36 weeks, labor started naturally. 3 in the morning, water breaking dramatically like movies. Diana drove while I breathed through contractions, called the list of people who'd asked to be notified. The waiting room filled before I'd even been admitted. 14 hours of labor. No epidural. Wanted to feel everything. Every contraction was progress. Every pain brought them closer. Dr. Patterson delivered both girls. Sarah came first. 5 pounds 2 ounces. Screaming immediately. Strong lungs. Fighter spirit. Grace followed 4 minutes later. 4 pounds 14 ounces. Quieter, but alert. Observant. Taking everything in. They placed both babies on my chest. Skin to skin. Hearts beating against mine. Perfect despite unconventional conception. Beautiful despite donor genetics. Mine despite everything that had tried to prevent their existence. The room filled with chosen family. Linda, Diana, Margaret, Tom and Emma. The IVF support group. Even Dr. Patterson cried. She'd seen my entire journey. Every failure, every heartbreak, every triumph. These babies were victories for all of us. Mark sent flowers. Generic. Card signed by florist. No personal message. I donated them to other rooms. Other mothers who might appreciate beauty without baggage. He'd never meet these girls. Had no claim. No rights. No role in their lives. Amy sent nothing. Radio silence. Probably best. Her son would never know his almost sisters. Would never understand the complexity of his creation story, the price paid for his existence. But forgiveness had found me anyway. Not for them. For myself. Forgiving my body for not producing viable eggs. Forgiving my heart for choosing wrong. Forgiving my mind for ignoring red flags. Self-compassion felt radical after years of self-blame. The first night home was terrifying. 2 newborns. 1 adult. Math that didn't compute. But the village appeared. Diana took Sarah while I fed Grace. Margaret rocked whoever was fussing. Tom and Emma brought dinner. Linda handled laundry. Everyone contributing. Nobody keeping score. By 3 months, we'd found rhythm. Both girls sleeping 4-hour stretches. Synchronized feeding schedules. Doctor appointments confirming healthy development. Sarah had my stubborn streak despite different DNA. Grace had my mother's gentle spirit despite never meeting her. Nature versus nurture becoming irrelevant. They were becoming themselves. Perfectly imperfect. Absolutely adored. Tom and I had our first real date when the twins were 4 months old. Dinner at an Italian place while Margaret babysat. Conversation beyond children. About dreams. Travel. Books, music. The people we'd been before grief rewrote our stories. The people we might become as healing continued. He kissed me goodnight. Soft, respectful. No assumptions about what came next. Just possibility. Emma started calling me Aunt Nettie. Not Mom. That title belonged to her mother forever. But family nonetheless. She'd help feed the twins. Sing them lullabies. Teach them to clap. Pride radiating from her 6-year-old face. Big sister by choice, if not by blood. At 6 months, both girls were crawling. Pulling themselves forward with determination that felt familiar. Sarah racing toward everything dangerous. Grace observing before moving. Distinct personalities emerging daily. I'd worried donor eggs would create strangers. Instead, they'd created daughters who felt destined despite science. The day they both said Mama was ordinary. Tuesday afternoon. Playing on the nursery floor. Sarah babbled at first, random sounds that suddenly formed meaning. Grace repeated immediately, "Mama, Mama, Mama," I sobbed. Called Diana, Margaret, Linda, everyone who'd witnessed this journey. My daughters knew me, named me, claimed me. Mark remarried when the twins were 8 months old. Someone from Arizona, 22 years old, pregnant already. Derek sent the announcement. Thought I should know. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction, just indifference. His patterns would repeat. His consequences would compound. But my life had moved beyond his orbit. Tom proposed on the twins' first birthday. Not marriage, not yet. But moving forward, becoming official, introducing me as his girlfriend, Emma as the girl's sister, building something intentional. I said yes, to possibility, to partnership, to family formed through choice rather than obligation. The birthday party was enormous. Every person who'd supported us, every woman who'd shared her story, every friend who'd held me while I rebuilt. Pink and purple decorations because the girls loved colors. Cake everywhere because toddlers were messy. Photos capturing joy that seemed impossible 2 years ago. I stood in my kitchen that night, twins finally sleeping, surveying the beautiful chaos. The house that had witnessed collapse now hosted celebration. The nursery built on deception now sheltered truth. The woman who'd failed at natural conception had succeeded at intentional motherhood. My phone buzzed with a text. Amy. First contact in 18 months. A photo of her son. Walking, smiling, innocent of his origin story. The message was simple. I'm sorry. For everything. Your daughters are lucky. You won. I deleted it without responding. This wasn't about winning. Never had been. It was about surviving, rebuilding, choosing joy despite sorrow, creating beauty from ashes, becoming the mother I was meant to be through paths I'd never imagined. Standing in that doorway one final time, remembering the collapse, I felt profound gratitude. Not for the betrayal, never that, but for the strength it revealed, the community it created, the family it ultimately delivered. 2 daughters, 1 possible partner, 1 chosen daughter, dozens of supporters, love multiplied rather than divided. The door I'd collapsed behind had become a gateway, not to the life I'd planned, but to the life I'd needed. The one where I was enough, where donor eggs created miracles, where single motherhood meant supported motherhood, where betrayal became rebirth. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, toddler tantrums, developmental milestones, relationship navigation, career growth, normal life complicated by extraordinary origins. But tonight in this house that had witnessed everything, I was exactly where I belonged. Mother to Sarah and Grace, survivor of infertility and infidelity, creator of unconventional perfection. The greatest revenge wasn't living well. It was living authentically, fully, completely, without apology or explanation. My daughters would know their story eventually. The scientific conception, the dramatic revelation, the village that raised them. They'd understand that families were built through intention, not tradition. That love multiplied when freely given. That their mother had fought universes to bring them home. And maybe someday when they're older, facing their own struggles, they'll remember that their mother once collapsed behind a door. But more importantly, she got back up, rebuilt everything, created them from determination and donor eggs and fierce love. Taught them that endings were just beginnings in disguise. That's the legacy I'll leave. Not the betrayal, not the failure, but the rising, the rebuilding, the absolute refusal to let someone else's cruelty define my capacity for joy. These girls, these unexpected miracles were never Mark's loss. They were always my destiny, just delivered differently than expected. The door closed. The house settled. 2 babies slept peacefully in sage-green serenity. And I finally understood that sometimes the best families were the ones you chose, the ones you fought for, the ones you created from broken pieces that somehow formed perfect wholes. Love multiplied, hope restored, dreams redesigned, but definitely not destroyed. What would you have done if you walked into your home and discovered your entire life was a lie? Would you have collapsed like I did? Or would you have found strength you didn't know existed? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real experiences from women who've survived the impossible. Share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for witnessing my journey from betrayal to blessing. Remember, your worth isn't determined by what others take from you, but by what you choose to build from the pieces they leave behind. Until next time, keep rising, keep fighting, and keep believing that your miracle might come differently than planned, but it's coming. Much love to all of you watching today.